While meetings between the leaders of NATO countries continue today in Washington, this as Canada faces increasing pressure to increase its defense spending to come in line with NATO targets. For more on this, let's go live to Washington. CTV's Judy Trin is there. Judy, good to talk to you about this. So what do we know right now about the package of new supports being pledged by NATO for Ukraine?
In his opening statement at yesterday's ceremony, U.S. President Joe Biden pledged more air defense systems for Ukraine. And he also said that that NATO was going to create a mission, a dedicated mission in Germany, which will coordinate future weapons and funding for Ukraine in its war against Russia. What he also said was that this mission would be led by a 3-star general. Now, what is important about this is that it still falls short of what Ukraine President Vladimir Zelensky wants. Vladimir Zelensky was hoping for an actual start to negotiations for membership in NATO. He knows that Ukraine would not be accepted as a member while it's at war with Russia, but he was hoping for some action on that front in which they could start those initial meetings and negotiations. That didn't happen. However, Joe Biden has said in his opening remarks that NATO is united and that it will lead to the defeat of Russia.
Okay, NATO is united, but it's not like everyone is necessarily on the same page, certainly when it comes to the spending that's sort of required to be a member of the club. Canada, we know, is lagging, Judy, and is facing criticism sort of quietly and publicly, especially from the Americans, over its defense spending. And some of the reporting about Canada's preparedness is pretty concerning here. How has Prime Minister Trudeau responded to the criticism of Canada not meeting the target?
Prime Minister Trudeau has not yet answered questions from reporters on this. He is scheduled for a news conference Thursday on the last day of the summit. However, we get a sense of what he will say from a speech that he made to the NATO Climate Change Center yesterday, in which he basically said that the funding for NATO before the Liberals came to power under former Prime Minister Stephen Harper was at less than 1%. And what the Trudeau government has done has brought that up significantly. It's important to point out that since 2006, Canada has pledged to meet the 2% target and has failed at it under successive Liberal and Conservative governments. So what Trudeau is basically pointing to is what he's done since then. In the latest defense strategy plan, what the government has said is that it will reach 1.76% GDP spending on defense by 2030. But it still doesn't have a plan, Nick, to get to 2%. Of 32 member nations, 23 have met that mark. Canada has not. We are actually 5th from the bottom. And it's being called shameful. The third most powerful man in the U.S., the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, yesterday said that Canada was riding on the coattails of the U.S. And then he said basically that it is shameful and that we need to do better. 2/3 of U.S. senators have also said that about Canada, Nick.
Yeah, okay, and that is our biggest trading partner indeed, not necessarily the way we want to see things. Okay, CTV's Judy Trin in Washington. Appreciate this update from the NATO summit. Thanks, Judy.